Okay, so now we are in After Effects. As you remember, we just leave After Effects with these two settings. So we have our pest doctor and we just keyed out everything which was green and masked out the area around the green screen. And then we just animated the simple camera and then switch over to Blender to make our background elements. And now we can combine these two elements together. So as you can see, I already imported the PNG file. It took about 10 minutes to render in Eevee, so that's pretty fast. And there's one big change. If we now put this into our comp, you can see what's going on. So first off, it works. So our camera in Blender and our camera in After Effects match. So if we now play this back, you can see that everything looks fine until here. But, and there's the big but, I realized that I made a big mistake, and that's the scaling issue. So as you can see, my pest doctor is not properly scaled. So the environment and the height of our pest doctor is not ideal, let's say, because he looks a little bit too tiny. So that's really my mistake. Sorry for that. So I quickly adjusted a little bit of this composition. Let me show you what I did. So here's the original file that we've created until here. And here's the modified version. So as you can see, I just changed the background element a little bit because I thought it would be cooler to not see anything except for the tombstone. So I just placed a second tombstone in front of our cross, even though it makes no sense, but it feels a little bit better. And then our transition from one place to another is different. Next, I just changed the tree, which was, I think it was here, and put it over to this one. I cropped a little bit of the plane because I don't need it that wide. And I think I've added in this tree here in the back. And furthermore, some more elements here in the background, even though this one is not even, I think it's not seen anyway. Oh no, it's not. So maybe we can put it like here or so. Yeah, so I just changed a few settings and just changed the scale of the mausoleum, as you can see, because our pest doctor was not well integrated. It feels a little bit too tiny, so there was a little bit of a scaling issue. But other than that, I didn't change too much. So everything else, the light and the composition overall didn't change. I think I get the background element here a little bit closer. So I think in the original version, the gate was, oh no, it's not that much. Maybe I just put all of this stuff a little bit closer. And because I've changed the composition, I was able to get rid of the mossy stones. But other than that, that is more or less the result. So I just give it a little bit more detail and a little bit more love. So we came from this to this. And if I now just put the new render into our composition, we have more or less a similar result, but now the scaling of the pest doctor feels much better. Hopefully you can see the difference. It's a slight change, but it's an important one, I think. And from this on, we will now start the compositing. And for that, we have a few elements we have to import into our scene. Okay, so let me show you the main assets that I'd like to show you. So these are a few LUTs. And you can get most of these LUTs out of the Quarantine pack, which is from Triune Films or Film Riot, if you might know the channel here on YouTube. And within this pack, there are music and VFX assets, sound effects, and very importantly for our project, the LUTs. Alternatively, you can buy the Cinematic LUTs V4 pack, which includes some of these LUTs as well. So we will use the Joker asset especially, but you can use, of course, many other of these very great cinematic LUTs and implement them into your project to get a nice, let's say, first film look for your project. So you can see it down here. We have nice transitions and the LUTs work really great with all sorts of cameras. So check them out. It's a pricey product, but if you don't have the budget, you can switch to the Quarantine pack. Next element is Grain, which I downloaded for free from this page, Holy Grain. So you can download free film grain, so you just have to sign up and then you get a file which contains this 35mm film grain. So we will use that, and I use another element from Triune Film, which is this one, which is the electric pack. And in this pack, as you can see, we got this cloud element, and this contains some background thunderstorm. So it's a really nice pack. So you get a lot of more assets, but these are the ones that I like to use in this case. So these are the three main sources. So if you haven't already got these one, please download them, buy them whatsoever, or find other ways to follow along with the tutorial. So I will import these elements first, and we'll put that into our comp. And what I like to do first is change the composition settings. So there are like two ways to do it, one the right way and one the, let's say, cheesy way. So let me show you the right way first. So of course, I'd like to crop the image to a more, filmic look. And we have to do that in the composition settings. So we would like to change this one to, I don't know, to 850, and we would create kind of like this crop. And if we just display this one on YouTube or on your TV, you would get these letterboxes that look a little bit more interesting, a little bit more cinematic. Anyway, for the purpose of this tutorial, I will leave it at full HD and we'll work a little bit cheesy with a letterbox. Same approach, but we just added in these letterboxes artificially. So it's the good old video co-pilot way, so to say. I think Andrew Kramer did it this way, so he just added in like a black solid, and then you would just make a mask, something like that. And then it would have to change the mask from added to subtracted, and he would have like his letterboxes. So that was the old way in all the video co-pilot tutorials. And as a tribute, we will do the same thing here. But of course, the right way is to trim down your composition settings to get the right aspect ratio. But in this case, we'll do it this way, and all of a sudden it looks a little bit better. And very importantly, we hide some of the mistakes, so you can see it up here, for example. So we don't want to see like these elements. I'm not pretty sure what that is. Maybe it was the grass asset or something, but I don't want to see this anyway. And more importantly, our pest doctor is a little bit cut off. So we are hiding this with the letterboxes and just get away with that, hopefully. And just with these two settings, we get a little bit more interaction. Okay, what I'd like to do next is to slightly adjust the colors. Once again, I'm not a color grader by any means. So once again, I do it a little bit the cheesy way this time. So really search for someone who's doing a better job than me. But what I like to do is use an adjustment layer. So you can go up here into layers, new, and then searching for adjustment layers. I'm sorry for the German version. I didn't change that, but I can tell you what the English name is. An adjustment layer is more or less an empty container where you can put up all sorts of effects. And everything that is below this layer will be affected by this adjustment layer. So I'd like to use some sort of color grading. So let's go for Lumetri color. And we can load this effect onto our adjustment layer. And let's call this one color grading or color correction. And then we can start doing some basic color correction. What I'd like to do is to reduce the contrast, because the Blender render and the camera settings, I think I was shooting this in normal Rec 709 on my Panasonic camera. And by reducing the contrast, we're getting a brighter image because we are adding contrast within our LUT. So this way we can just ensure that our look is not too contrasty and too dark. And we can do that in the creative section. So you can see here's the preset for LUT, and we can open up this drop down menu and search for some LUT. And in this case, I've prepared my LUTs in the asset folder. As mentioned before, there's the Triune Film LUT. We will take the Joker LUT because it's a nice greenish tint. And by doing that, you can already see that both of our elements, so the background render from Blender and our footage, is a little bit better connected this way. So both have now a greenish tint. And now it feels like they're a little bit more connected, or feel like one layer because they share the same color information. So it's a cheesy and a cheap trick, but it will do the job for us. And next up, let's focus on our sharpness. So as you can see, our pest doctor is still sharp, but in the camera movement, he should be sharp at this stage. So let's integrate that. And we can do that by using a different effect, which is the camera lens blur. There's a very terrible name in Germany, which is called Kameralinsenweichzeichner. So the German words for all of these effects are really terrible. But anyway, let's implement that. And we can put that directly onto our pest doctor layer. And we can do this by drag and drop this one here, or we can put it here. And as you can see, he gets immediately a little bit out of focus. but it's not enough. I think if you just compare the shallow depth of field with our Pest Doctor, we need to raise this up a little bit more, so maybe something like 14. And that feels a little bit better. And now we just have to animate our camera lens blur effect. So starting here, where the focus is totally on the tombstone, and while the camera is rolling, we can shift focus to our Pest Doctor, maybe around here, and put it back to, let's say 1. So we don't get a completely over-sharpened, or let's say 0.5, something like that. So he's a little bit unsharp. So we get this digital look out of the footage a little bit, because for me he's too sharp, and if we just change the resolution to full, he's still pretty sharp. So if I do that, it's a little bit better. So I think 0.5 is a good value. Now we have to bring down the resolution once again, because otherwise we don't get any feedback from After Effects for pre-rendering. And yeah, we just changed like 2 settings, getting letterboxes, getting a little bit of color, and changed the focus. And really now both of these footages look much better, at least in my opinion. And we can tweak this furthermore. So what I'd like to do is to change the color of the Pest Doctor a little bit. So as you can see, especially the lamp is totally oversaturated, because it feels like a night scene, and at night colors don't pop up that way. So maybe we can go into a different effect, which is a tint, and we can put that onto our Pest Doctor. And this is now, of course, black and white, which is too much. But maybe we can bring this down to like 30%. So let's see the before and after, before, after. Maybe we can even crank this up to 35. Something like that. So he's a little bit less colorful, which seems to be better for this nightish scene. Okay, so that looks good. As a next step, we can implement a little bit of darkness, because for my taste, he's a little bit too bright, even though the light matches a little bit better now. But I think we can do another lumetri effect on him. So let's search for lumetri once again and put the effect on our Pest Doctor once again. And then we can maybe get a little bit of highlights out of his body. So maybe like we can see it here. Okay, so maybe we darken it up a little bit. Just a little bit, don't overdo it. And maybe we can add in some shadows, just a little bit. Okay, so before and after. And maybe that helps to integrate our Pest Doctor even more into our background render. And I think this looks way better. Okay, so, and now comes a very important ingredient. And we will use another effect, which is not there by default inside of After Effects. Or I mean, it's there, but it's a little bit harder to set up this way. And the cool guys from Production Crate just developed a free effect, which is called Light Wrap. And what it will do is pretty good to see here. So here's our green screen footage. And what the Light Wrap does is it tries to match the background color, or it tries to match the color of the background, and immediately adjust this with the green screen footage. So as you can see, this is a very nice effect, and it will help to get better result and better integration of our green screen footage. So you can see it here. We can do, of course, all kinds of settings with this effect. So download, it's free. I think you have to sign up once again, but I think that shouldn't be that much of a problem. And if we now go back into After Effects, we can see it here. So we have to click on our element, and we can go up to Effects. And as you can see, I already installed this one. It's called Production Crate Light Wrap. And we can click that. And nothing happens, because we need to do one more trick. We have to pre-compose our background element. So you can go up into Layer and then Pre-compose, or you can use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-C. And we call this the background render. And we will leave all the attributes in the new comp, and just ensure that the composition is as long as our main composition. And we hit OK. And all that After Effects is doing is creating a background element. If we now open this up, you can see this is our background layer. It's just stored into another composition. And then we can do something to this. So, and now we have to say, maybe we can just close all of these effects. And now we just have to define what our background element is. And if we take this at this stage, and then watch our Pest Doctor, if we now set up our background render, you see, it starts to glow up. I mean, this is really extreme, but you get the idea what the effect will do to us. So now this feels much better integrated. And a little bit like the keylight effect, we can now change the view from Final Composite to Wrap Solo. And if we solo that, you can see what the effect is trying to mimic. So he tried to match the color of the background with our green screen footage, which is nice. But we have to do a little bit adjustment to this. So first off, let's click on the pre-mold background. This way the edge gets a little bit softer, like so. And we can bring up the blur a little bit. And we can change the width so that there's a nice feathering going on in the mask. And if we now click on the Final Composite and unsolo that, we got kind of like this effect. So it feels a little bit softer, and you just have to fine tune how soft you want your footage to be. Maybe we can set this one to add. Sometimes that helps. We can play around with the exposure to make it even brighter or maybe less, depending on what you want. And what we can also do is we can go back into Keylight, for example, and we could just adjust the softness a little bit and the shrink. So if we raise this all up, you can see that our Pest Doctor becomes pretty edgy. And if we shrink this to a value like minus 1.5, we get a better transition and just cut off a little bit of the nasty edges. So this way we can furthermore control the hardness of our green screen edges. And I think this looks a little bit better integrated and gives a more realistic result just with a few clicks. So I like the simple approach to this. So even if you have never touched any compositing, you just have to remember like 3 or 4 different settings, and you get instantly better results within your green screen and background elements. And what I then like to do is to add in the film stock grain. And we can now mimic more or less this film log with a 35mm grain. So let's do that. Oh, and by the way, ensure that your letterbox is always on top, because otherwise it will be affected by the color grade and later on by the post-processing effects. So ensure that our letterbox is at the very front. And as you can see, our grain is looking something like that. And there are some nice artifacts, as you can see here. So I really like this one. And it's free, so really give it a go, holygrain.com, and you can download this for free. And we will have to change the blending type from normal to, I think it was overlay? Yeah, something like that. And now you can see that this is starting to feel even more integrated. Maybe it's a little bit hard, so maybe we can bring down the transparency to, I don't know, 50% or something. And once again, if I just crank up the resolution so you can see it a little bit better, and we play around with the transparency, you get a very noisy, very grainy image, which I like personally. But you can soften this by just bringing down the transparency to something more likely to maybe like 41. And you still got the grain going on both of these footages, so this is nice. So this way we integrate our footage, so the green screen footage and the background element from Blender even more. And now we got a very nice and subtle effect going on. Once again, I have to bring down the resolution because the feedback is constantly getting worse because we're adding in more effects and more footage. So at this stage, your PC really have to do a lot of work. Okay, and of course you can see that the layer is a little bit too short, but there's a quick and dirty trick. So you can right click on the grain footage and then interpolate the footage. And we can go for the loop section, and I think 2 is fine. And this way our footage gets longer or gets repeated inside of the composition. You can see that our footage becomes longer, so we can now expand this to the end of our clip. And this way it will work. Okay, so as you can see, our footage already looks pretty good. And now we can just do some sort of little bit of spicing up, but we're close to finish line. So what I did in the original version, I was adding in some background thunderstorms to this. So we can go into our background element and we can import our cloud layers, as you remember. It's from the Triune Film Pack. And as you can see, this is what's going on. So obviously we have to make this one smaller and we have to bring it into the background. And now we can search for an effect because it's a little bit too heavy for my taste. So maybe we can tint this and maybe bring it up to 35% as we did with our Pest Doctor. And now we can set this one to add. And this way, as you can see, our layer is becoming better integrated into our clouds. Maybe we can just cut it a little bit so we can distribute this one over the footage here. And maybe we can put this one right up here. I mean, it would be cooler if we would have rendered like the background and then our other elements separately. This way would be easier, but for the sake of this tutorial, I think it's fine. But we have to care a little bit more about the integration. So you can see we have to bring this down a little bit to like maybe 12 and ensure that there is no interaction happening with the elements. Something like that. Okay. And maybe one more. So we can, for example, do that. And maybe we'll have it here. And maybe we can just like rotate this like so that it looks a little bit different. So once again, it's a pretty cheesy effect. But if we now go back into the original comp, by the way, you can do that here with the tab key. So if we go into tab, then we can go back into our previous render. And if we now take a look, we got this result. Maybe we can put the last one here again. And furthermore, what is important, as you can see, our footage is too sharp, right? So we have to make sure that our camera lens blur effect is already on this footage. So we can raise this up to maybe like 50. So it better matches with our background. Maybe even more. Yeah, let's go with 67 and we can copy and paste the effect on the other two layers. And if we now go back into our previous render, we can hopefully see a better result. Yeah, so that starts to look really, really nice. Okay, I like that. And now we can do some just, smaller effects that may or may not look interesting to your footage. I don't know. So we can implement another adjustment layer. So once again, go up to layer, new, and then adjustment layer. And we can call this, I don't know, post processing. And we can mask that. So we can use our mask tools up here. And if we hold down the mouse, we can change the mask type from rectangle to an ellipse. So let's do that. And we can draw our mask something like this maybe. And then we can, with the G key, adjust our points. So if we go into this, we can adjust this a little bit. So we want some soft edges. And we can now make our corners here a little bit unsharp and we can darken that a little bit. So let's do that once again using the camera lens blur effect. And now, of course, our mask is the wrong way. So we have to invert the mask. So set it from add to subtract. And this way we got a sharp center and a little bit of unsharpness in the corners. We can maybe bring up the effect to something like 20. And then we can, for example, feather the mask a little bit and create a nice transition. Just to get kind of like this vintage look that you might see in films when they use old vintage lenses from the 70s or something. They always have some sort of imperfections and that is nice. We can, of course, add in some chromatic aberrations on the same effect and maybe change this one to stereo. And as you can see now, if I just make this one a little bit like so and this one a little bit like so, we get a little bit of imperfection. So really play around with the effect and we get some nice, maybe this is a little bit too crazy. Maybe we can bring this down to like 10 so the sharpness is not that intense. But we just create some sort of imperfections, and this is what compositing is all about, just to make the footage match and feel a little bit more organic. At least this is my definition of compositing at this stage when you're doing green screen compositing. You know, create the illusion that this was really filmed with old vintage lenses. Be a little bit aware of the effect. So as you can see, we got some problems here. So maybe we have to change that to stereo. And yeah, we get some sort of imperfections. Okay, and we could, for example, do once again the old Andrew Kramer effect, and we could search for curves. Put this onto our post-processing, and for example, just darken this a little bit to get some sort of vignetting, just very slightly. But this way, if we just enable that before and after, it's a nice little effect. But really, this is really like we're already doing the job, and this is really fine-tuning it on a very peaky level. And some of you just don't like these effects, but I tend to like this one. And yeah, I think we are like close to the finish line. There's so much more we can do. And what I did, for example, I mean, if you have the budget, you can of course do some flaring. So for example, we could create a new solid. We call this optical flares. And once again, you can use Video Copilot. Pricey add-on for like, I think $100, but it's totally worth it. And we can go up into options, for example, and search for a nice flare. Maybe we go up with this anamorphic one, and maybe we can kill some of the very prominent effects. And then we can put this one to the rendered mode on transparent and put this into place. And of course, this one needs to be blurred out as well. Maybe like 12, I don't know. And then bring down the brightness and bring down the color, by the way, because this one should be more of a whitish color. And we have to animate our flares. So like we would do with the point light in Blender, we would have to animate our flare. But yeah, you get the idea. We can just do some sort of cheap tricks on that, and we can do some flaring, and it may or may not look cool. It's up to you. It's a little bit subjective whether you like that or not. I tend to not like this one, so let's kill this. And let me show you what I did. Okay, so what I did was creating another layer with only the point light. And I changed the point light from a point light to being an area light. And this way I get kind of like this nice beam. And what I did was I was just, turning off all the layers except for our beam light and rendered only like this version out with a PNG sequence with alpha channel, of course. So I could add this one to our layer and then put this as an overlay over our green screen footage. So let me show you how this looks. So we can import this lamp overlay and import this as a PNG sequence, pretty important. And then put this one over our pest doctor and set this one to add. And we can just bring down the opacity to maybe like 50 or something. And we can create a nice lantern effect. I mean, this is not properly animated in Blender, I guess, so we would have to change that. But you get the idea, right? So we could, for example, bring this down even further so it's not too bright. And maybe change that a little bit so that our lamp feels a little bit better integrated. And this way we created like this nice hazy effect on our lantern. And I think for me that feels a little bit better. So I'd like to keep it that way. And it feels better than the optical flare. At least this is my feeling for this. And yeah, I think if we now put this all together, so once again, let's unhide everything. So let's see where we came from. So here's our original file, just the render and our pest doctor, and it looked okay, I would say. Then we've added in some letterboxes. Then we've added in some color grading. Then we've added in some grain, a little bit softly. Then we've added in some post-processing effects so that it feels a little bit more interesting. And finally, we add in our overlay. Yeah, we've created a simple shot a static shot, which we turned into a moving camera, which is nice. With a shift from the focus from this point to this point. And for me, this is kind of like a nice, like beginner-friendly tutorial into the world of compositing and green screen and Blender and all that kind of stuff. I mean, of course we could do better, and we could just, you know, have some moving trees and better vegetation with some better packs. I mean, I've used the free 2D image pack, but it still looks okay. And we could do better assets, and we could, you know, do a lot of more stuff to this. We could use some sort of wind machine for our pest doctor so that it interacts better with the wind. All that kind of stuff. But like for a first impression, this is a nice illusion, I think. And at least this was the feedback out of the workshops. A lot of people who never had any touch to 3D or to green screen had a lot of fun creating this and really just get a feeling for what is possible. And it's not that complicated, I think. So this is kind of like the conclusion of this workflow. So we can create something very cool from like an effect that was like green screenish and turn it into something that is a little bit more interesting and feels a little bit more alive. Thank you for watching. I hope that was interesting for you and you grabbed some information that you didn't have before. And yeah, see you in the next tutorial. Bye.